All right, here we go. We are now live. It is Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, and it is time for another weekly episode of Conversations with Commodores. And I've got one of my classmates. I've got Brian Donnelly out of Nashville with us this evening. Brian, thanks for spending a couple of hours, or not a couple of hours, a couple of minutes with us tonight. I appreciate you being brave enough to come on here, knowing you may get a little harassment from the peanut gallery. How's your day going, bud?
Man, going great, Bernie, and happy to be here and relive some of these memories. So glad to be here.
Yeah, and that's what's one of the fun things about this conversation because you never know who or what is going to pop up in our 45 minutes to an hour time. And I want to give everybody a heads up. I'm working on a hot spot tonight, so who knows how much power I'm going to have or how delayed we may be. So I'm just going to preface it with that. Brian, you came out of Germantown in the fall of '86. What brought you to Vanderbilt? Let's start it with that one. Why school?
Yeah, Bernie, can you hear me? It looks like you're shaky on your end. Hello?
Well, through, Brian.
Okay.
Did you hear me?
Yep. It just your face is still. You're not moving. Okay. Yeah, no, good question. How did I
Well,
get to
I can hear you
Vanderbilt?
just fine.
Okay. Um, at first I would say Vanderbilt really wasn't on my radar at all. But we did have a standout player at Germantown back in the early 80s, a guy named Jeff McFerrin who played collegiately at Vanderbilt, was a freshman All-American. He was actually roommates with Daryl Holt's brother, Jeff. So, Bernard, are you there? Did I lose you? Something happened. Bernie? Hello? Bernie, can you hear me?
All right, let's see. I think I may be on live. Brian, are you back with me, bud?
Yes, sir.
All right, let me. We're still going, so let's back up. You were talking about Jeff McFerrin.
Yes. Yes. So Jeff played at Vanderbilt, and so that's kind of how I kind of learned a little bit about Vanderbilt. Um, and then I guess my senior year, I really didn't know exactly where I wanted to go when I finished playing football. I was actually looking at some smaller schools like Rhodes, Sewanee. Had an opportunity to go to Penn, Dartmouth, but it was just kind of influx. And actually, Watson Brown was going to be speaking at the Touchdown Club in Memphis. And my head coach and I went to the meeting, and we had a conversation with Watson, and I told him that I'd had an interest to come and walk on, and that's how we got the ball going. And he connected me. I believe the gentleman's name was Lynn Holloway. Does that sound right? Maybe he was the recruiting coordinator.
Van Ho-
Va-
Van Holloway.
Van Holloway. Yeah, so
Hmm.
kind of just started that process with Van, but I had to go through the whole entry process as well to get academically enrolled. So that kind of late summer, early summer, I guess, late spring, I kind of started that process. Um, and they really didn't have an opening for the school. So it was really kind of waiting to see who was going to drop out from
Hmm.
early enrollment, who wouldn't show up as a regular student in August. So I was kind of in limbo most of the summer, but I had a backup plan. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but I went to military prep school during that first semester. So I didn't actually start at Vanderbilt until January of '87.
Hmm.
So because I wasn't accepted into the school and I had a backup, with a Naval Academy prep school, where if I had stayed the full year at this prep school, I would have been automatically enrolled into the Naval Academy. So I used that
Mhm.
as a backup during the period, just wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and I wanted to eliminate the Naval Academy if that was not the choice I wanted. And so my
Mhm.
father and I just kind of discussed it in detail and just kind of said, well, if you don't like it after a semester, you get into Vanderbilt, you can go to Vanderbilt in the spring. So that's kind of how I got to Vanderbilt. It's kind of a wonky way of going, but that's how I got there.
Well, David Kropp isn't buying anything that you just said. He says you just didn't want to go through summer workouts. And
Yeah.
then Andy Mack, who just joined in, said that you're kind of sadistic because you came in the winter. You had to join the winter workouts. So either way, you're catching some flack right now.
Yeah.
And Slaw Dog says to tell you hello as well.
Hey guys, hey Steve, hey Crop, hey Andy. I always remember about my walk-on buddy David. Didn't he
Well,
always put his helmet on backwards or something when he'd be on the sidelines? For some reason, I remember that.
Crop, Crop, what do you say about that? Does that have anything to do with your mental state at the time? I'm just asking for friends out here. Well, Brian, what was it like being at that prep school for that first semester, knowing that you didn't necessarily want to be there, but how
Yeah.
did you deal with that? Where was it located?
It was in Harlingen, Texas, almost all the way down to Padre Island, almost right at the border. So it was called Marine Military Academy, and it was a prep school for the Naval Academy. And I was called a PG postgraduate, and just go through the year, I would have been automatically accepted into the Naval Academy. And I did like the Naval Academy. I did visit the Naval Academy, so I did have that as a backup plan. But yeah, it's getting up, Bernie, at 5 a.m., doing
Mm,
PT and having to make your bed and doing all that. And it was a little too structured for me. I'm pretty structured enough, as Andy McCarroll
mhm,
can attest, being a roommate. So I'm always getting up early and I'm always making my bed. It's just habits now.
mhm. Well, you get to the end of that semester, and then at what point, December or January, did you realize you were coming to Nashville?
Yeah, so I kind of knew after the end of that semester in Texas, and so just kind of finished out the semester, and you know, kind of already had the paperwork in and was going to start in January. But I really didn't know anyone, at Vanderbilt. I knew Andy McCarroll. We were rivals in high school, and so we knew of each other, but
Mhm.
we weren't like good friends or anything. But yeah, kind of came in kind of blind coming into Vanderbilt.
Well, I know that you had met Van Holloway. Obviously, you had met Watson.
Yep.
You knew of Andy and maybe his older brother Mac. I don't know if Mac, I think we still have one more year with us.
I think Mac
Um,
was
but
gone by
what was
then.
your impression when you what was he? I couldn't remember when
Yeah,
Mac was finished.
yeah. So that'd have been
What
spring
was
of
your
'87. I
impression?
don't think Mac was there.
86, fall of 86 may have been his final season.
Yep.
What was your first impressions about just meeting the guys, and now you're part of an SEC Division One program? There may have been some parts of it that might have been a little easier than the prep school you just came from, but certainly different though in many other
Yeah.
regards.
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, just kind of got started in on Coach Bates and his workout routine, just kind of joined up and kind of
Mhm.
jumped in, and then uh, hit spring practice and that what is it? That 80, that would have been spring of '87. So kind of just jumped in. Uh, but everybody was great. I got to experience the steroid parties at Branscombe there for the recruits, I guess there in
For
early
sure.
January, early February. So got to meet a lot of the guys through that, social side of things. Uh, but yeah, no, I felt like everybody was great and welcoming. I mean,
It's you came your route as a walk on. There's no set route, if you will. We've had guys on here who were part of other sports programs at Vanderbilt who ended up joining the football program. You had guys who were just hoping for that scholarship, and there's all different routes, if you
Yeah.
will, to get to the football program. But once you got involved, once you got into the routine, did it seem like this was a place where you wanted to be? You wanted to contribute to the team? Because I know that you had other things, other interests, as most of us do, outside of just playing football. But did football seem like a priority for you once you got onto the into the program?
Yeah, I was 100% in. It was definitely a priority, and I was trying to get a scholarship. That was my objective, and the only reason why I was there. That was the deal I made with my parents, right? So, but the other reason I wanted to pick Vanderbilt was not only a chance to play in the SEC, but my mother's an educator, principals, and she was a superintendent of Shelby County Schools. So, school was always important in our family. So, you know, but yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that first semester, or I guess it would be the spring semester of our freshman year. You're getting acclimated. We've
Hmm.
got spring ball coming up. I guess at what point during that process, I don't know if it was that semester or maybe later, Brian, that you really kind of became comfortable with everything academically,
Yeah.
athletically, socially. There's so much to
Yeah.
absorb as a first semester student at Vanderbilt. It's like drinking from a fire hose, is the way I describe it. But when did it become
Right.
comfortable for you?
Yeah. I actually felt like the busier you are with your schedule, with
Mm-hmm.
workouts and practice, that you actually become a better student. You have to be a better time manager. So I actually did fine, with from an academic perspective. On the football side, I would say, it probably took me a year to kind of feel kind of comfortable, and where I felt like I was contributing or bringing value. Probably it wasn't until the summer of the following season. So that would have been um, after two springs. That
Mm-hmm.
would have been, I guess, the
So
summer of
probably fall,
88, maybe
fall,
87.
fall of
But
'88.
yeah, or even the summer of 87 that I was there. So yeah, just, playing pickup basketball. Basketball was always my kind of passion. And so I think I was just kind of contributing and competing and just with the guys. And I think that, from an athletic perspective, I think, I the guys kind of welcomed me, respected me.
Even Andy, even Andy respected you.
Have you seen Andy on a basketball court?
Oof,
He'll
oof.
take you out, I'll tell you
Well,
that.
you may
Sorry,
remember
Andy.
the basketball games that were inside the gym in the winters, and I didn't want to be anywhere near Andy McCarroll
Mm.
or any of those bigger guys. Brian, let's talk about other aspects of Vanderbilt life.
Yep.
Back in our time, there was not a set time that the NCAA put on, at least the first couple of years we were there. It seemed like we were there at McGugan or doing something 50 hours or more a week, the way it was. But there's more to life, believe it or not, guys out there. There's more to life than just being a football player. And I know that you had other aspects of your life that you enjoyed away from football. How were you able to incorporate fraternity life or social life, balancing that with, I'm sure, your mother's insistence on the academic life and football?
Yeah. No, good question. I really didn't even go into thinking of the fraternity or social side of things at Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a couple guys on the team that were in the fraternity, so they introduced me, more from just knowing some guys on the team, and that's kind of how I got involved. But it was a nice outlet for me, and you know, it was another aspect of my collegiate experience that was great, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And I still have tremendous friends to this day, where we play golf. We're on a fantasy football team, so you know it's nice to have pockets of friends, and I have a lot of friends from Vanderbilt. The regular students that live in Nashville, but even some of the guys, the football players that live here or come into town. So, I feel like I've pretty kept up in touch with a lot of folks over the years.
Well, and Brian, that's a real tribute to you because not a lot of guys who play Division I football, particularly at Vanderbilt, are able to balance the fraternity life or social life and academics and every other responsibility that you have. But frankly, without having your priorities straight, not any of those things would last very long, because if you don't get your rest, if you don't do your books, etc., you're not going to be able to do all of those things. Was there a transition period for you, or were you able to swim
Yeah.
pretty easily or pretty quickly once you got to campus?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. But it was pretty, I didn't have to go through rush. I didn't have to go through a lot of the things like a pledge or uh, new guys go through because I got excused, for workouts or different events. So, mine was just really when I could come down on a social perspective. And, it was always last on my list. It wasn't, first. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah. So by doing it that way, that was kind of how I was able to manage it.
Well, let's go back to the football side of things. What positions were you working out? Do you remember who your coach or some of
Yeah.
the teammates who were in that room with you? Where were you?
Yeah, no, I thought we had a great group of guys, just competitive, collaborative, and just encouraged everyone. The head coach was a guy by the name of Dick Hopkins, not head coach, but the defensive back coach was Dick Hopkins. And I believe he's still coaching, or he was coaching at UT Chattanooga, maybe as a defensive coordinator not too long ago. Uh, but we had uh, Steve Law, Renford, Joe Gentry, AJ Arnold Elliott, rest in peace. Great, love Arnold. Um, Steve Meads, Kenny Pruss. Uh, who else? Fitzpatrick
You
was at
named some
corner.
athletes right there.
Um, but yeah, and David Kropp and myself, we were kind of at the free safety position or some strong safety. But David and I, we were the
You just
experts on the
named,
scout team.
well, Brian. Not only did you name some real characters right there in that group, but some excellent athletes as well. I'm
Oh,
sure that
forgot
those.
Chip.
Oh, how do you
Chip
forget
Price.
Chip Price? Well,
Yeah.
he is very quiet and kind of in the corner kind of a
Yes, he
guy.
is quiet. I
What
wonder if
surprised
anybody knows
you?
where he is. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah, we've put out an all points bulletin for the last 2 years, and he has not surfaced yet.
Hey, he was
Brian,
like that in college, so not surprised.
what was it about college ball that surprised you the most? What was your welcome to the SEC moment that you were not playing back at Germantown versus
Yeah.
NUS any longer?
I guess the first spring, Everett Crawford rocked my. I mean, I've never been knocked out, and I was literally almost knocked out on a scrimmage or a play in spring. Uh, that was my welcome to the SEC was Everett. And of course, Andy McCarroll and I would have an opportunity to bang heads as roommates. I'd love the opportunity to do that every now and then to Andy. But yeah, that was my welcome moment. But yeah, no, the guys
All
were
right.
faster, stronger. Uh, I wouldn't say the defenses were that much more complex because back then, you still probably only had 5 to 10 defensive back calls, maybe, because we weren't playing a lot of man and weren't doing a lot of ISO. But, I have a nephew who played at Clemson, and the defensive coordinator at Clemson had something like 50 different defensive back calls. I mean, that's crazy. So it's a
Wow.
much different game.
Well, I was going to say it's also how the game has evolved from one generation to the next. Guys, I've got Brian Donnelly, originally out of Germantown. He's now in Nashville. He played with us in the late '80s for with Watson Brown's time period. Brian, things are starting to get a little personal here in the comments. I'm going to let you field a couple of these.
Bring it. Let's
And
go.
Andy wants to know if you still fold your socks.
I do. My girlfriend folds them now.
Well, I don't know why that means something to Andy, but Slaw Dog said that the reason why you didn't stick around with the Navy is because you found out you were seasick once you got into a boat.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, Slaw. Brian, let's talk a little bit about culture in the
Yep.
locker room and what it's like to be on a college team when you're a walk on. Was that any different for you from a mental standpoint about the way you were treated, your friendships, the teammates, the guys in the locker room? How was that for you?
Yeah, I thought, like I said, everybody was welcoming, everybody was great. Uh, Everybody always would come over and give you some advice, whether it's lifting weights or on a play or whatever. But no, I thought the culture at Vanderbilt was very close knit, very collaborative, like I said, and just a special group of guys. You think of what you have to go through, uh,
Mhm.
as a student athlete, especially at Vanderbilt. I mean, I used to think back that, like if I wanted to say what was the best of times or the worst of times, I used to think those 2-a-days, sometimes 3-a-days. I remember us doing 3-a-days when you'd have like a special team practice as the third practice. I mean, it was just miserable. Like, I mean, that has to be the hardest thing you'll ever experience as an individual, right? So, like, if you can make it through this, you can do anything. Whether you have a bad boss, whether you lose your job, whether you have some kind of failure economically, you can bounce back, right? I mean, you've gone through the gauntlet. So,
I mean, isn't the us going through the 3-a-days and the preseason workouts and all of the hard work that we do, how much of that do you attribute to physical uh, energy versus mental energy? You only have so much of those during a given day. And when your body starts to give out at the end of a day, do you rely more on maybe the reserve you have in your body, or do you think it's your mind now needs to start telling yourself, hey, we can do this. We need to do this. And I know that's a weird question, but so much of it is, I think, between your ears when it comes to college sports.
yeah, I think I'm just glad Coach Bates' workouts only lasted 30 minutes. That's how you got through it. You knew you could get through 30 minutes. I mean, gosh, I mean, what a pioneer, Coach Bates, was with the workouts, the CrossFit. Can you imagine? I mean, he started the CrossFit trend and workout 30 years prior. I mean, it's kind of like Watson too, being a pioneer with those offenses. They're doing that now, right? What he was implementing then. I mean, he was creating ISOs and matchups off the field and calling them in. So, but yeah, no, I would say the St. Valentine's Day massacre. We all remember that, right? That was
Well, I'm
pretty
I'm
brutal.
glad you brought
But
it up.
uh, and I remember summer school running, oh gosh, it was the 400s on the track. I mean, on the football field. It was so hot, and having to run, consecutive 400 sprints. That was hard. That was pretty
You,
tough.
and you remember doing some of those runs with weights held over your head, the
Yeah,
plates. And yeah, you're right. Coach Bates, I think, was way ahead of his time with a lot of that stuff.
yeah.
Um, you bring up the St. Valentine's
And
Day
you remember
massacre.
the Andy McCarroll postcard in the summer, right? Where he was doing some kind of leg press, and he leans over like he's blowing, some
Yeah. And
having a
do you
tough
remember
workout. But yeah,
do you
good
remember
stuff.
one of Coach Bates's do you remember one of Coach Bates's themes? We had a shirt, SMA. Do you remember that?
Yeah, something mental attitude, right? Strong mental attitude.
No, sick
Sick.
mental.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
That's
may even
Slaw.
still
Slaw,
have
you had a
that.
sick mental attitude.
That's
That's
right.
what Slaw
That's
was all
right.
about.
We got Michael Carrier is in the house with us. We got Ian Gaines. We got a couple other guys. Thank you, fellas, for joining us. I've got Brian Donnelly out of Germantown, played with us in the late '80s. Coach Watson Brown. Brian, let me ask you. You go through the first two seasons, '80. I guess it was '87 season, '88 season, and
Yep.
take us through some of your college career during that time period. I know that you had fraternity life mixed in there. You had social life. You had hopefully academic life as is required. What did you what did you find was the most fulfilling for you? Can you separate
Yeah,
it at
yeah.
all to say this is what I enjoyed the most?
Yeah, I think that summer before the 88 season, I did a full summer, session and really getting to know the guys, working out with them. But, I got the privilege and was fortunate to kind of start out that fall camp starting on special teams. And, and thankful for Watson giving me that opportunity to prove myself. So it didn't work out where I started, but I did get to travel. So I did get to go to the Georgia game. So that was an exciting, and I don't know if you remember this. Uh, this was the Georgia game in '88. This is when Roy Kramer closed the door on a female reporter. If you remember, I think it was like the female reporters were having access to the locker rooms. And Roy made national news. I just remember that. That was a big stink while we were in the locker room. That's all. Probably not everybody else remembers it because
Oh, I
we lost the game, but
no,
I remember
we
that being an incident.
yeah, that was kind of a low point, I would say, for Coach Kramer during his last few years at
Yeah.
Vanderbilt. That was not a good look
Well, the
at
other
all.
time that was a low point for Roy was when Wally Hubert parked his car in the parking lot and told him I'll park wherever I want to. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, that wasn't. Yeah, I do.
Oh
I
my
do.
gosh. Oh my gosh. All I do is I remember we were sitting in the meeting room before you go out to the practice field, and Watson comes in screaming, "Where are you, Wally?" He goes, "You better that old man you just talked to, you better go upstairs and apologize because he signs your scholarships."
Well, I'm hoping one day we'll get our buddy Wally.
Oh, yeah, Wally, great guy. I think I lost you again. You there, Bernie?
I think I'm here. I assume we're still now live,
Okay.
and I,
We were off for a second.
I apologize. It's I'm working on a hotspot. My internet's out, so we'll just keep plugging away, Brian, and hopefully we won't have any more disruptions. I want to take it to the fall of '89. You
Okay.
still with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You come from an athletic family, and we're joined at Vanderbilt by your younger brother, Chris. Kind of talk about that dynamics. Chris comes from, he's a couple years younger than you, from Germantown, and I can only imagine. I didn't get to play with either of my brothers on the collegiate or the high school level. What was going on in the Donnelly household at that time in the fall of '89?
Yeah. Well, at that time, Bernard, I had quit playing football, so I had stopped playing. So when Chris joined Vanderbilt in that fall, uh, I had already, decided to be a regular student. So, but no, I think it was a great opportunity for Chris, and I know Chris had a fantastic, freshman year, and he loves all his Vanderbilt teammates, and you know speaks to them, speaks to a lot of them even to this day. And I know he was big fans of Slaw and Renford, and a lot of the older guys, Doug Bradley, that kind of brought him in as a freshman because he did get to compete on a big stage his freshman year.
Well, I know that when Chris came in, there were a lot of big expectations. Were you able to provide, I guess, any of your experience to Chris? Did y'all have those kind of
Oh yeah.
conversations?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he got to know everybody through, coming up to visit or whatever. And so he'd met a lot of the guys. So I think he felt comfortable, walking in. And then I believe Watson kind of Chris was a quarterback as well in high school, so that was part of the draw for Chris to come to Vanderbilt, was that Watson was going to give him an opportunity to play some quarterback, right? But it worked out that he did pretty well on the defensive side of things.
Well, I was going to say, he really made his mark very quickly as a defensive back and played with us, I think maybe 2 years, 88, excuse me, 89 and 90 before sitting out a year and then transferring to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah,
I don't know if by that point, what year did you graduate, Brian?
I lost you there, Bernie. What was your last question?
Sorry about that. Did you graduate in the spring of 90 or 91?
Yeah, I graduated in the fall of December of 90. So I was 4 years, January of 87 through the fall of 90, December of 90.
All right, I think Brian is signing back on. I want to apologize, you guys. This is not common. We're just trying to do the best that we can. And if we have another interruption, we may just pause it for now and come back and reset on a night where we have better internet. And I apologize to Brian and anyone watching this evening. This is frustrating, but it's the internet and I can't control it. So we'll give Brian another few seconds to come back on. It's like he's trying to sign back in. If you guys will look back in the group, the group discussion, we've got Commodores lined up for the next several weeks. I've also put in there signups for any of the tailgates that are coming up. If you're a Black and Gold member, you should get an email with a specific code that is unique to you. You have to use that code to be able to claim your tickets to any particular game that you're going to, or to be able to purchase tickets as well. Hopefully Brian will join us I don't see him just yet, but this is just something that happens. All right, it shows that he's coming back in now. Slow Dog, I'll take that $5 donation for more bandwidth. It'll be greatly appreciated. I'll send you my Venmo. But I say in all sincerity that Brian was an inspiring guy as a roommate. Here's a rare compliment from the Inchman. He says that you really worked your ass off as a walk-on, and he appreciates you as a teammate and a friend, Brian. And thank you, David Crop and Slaw Dog. Y'all are contributing to my bandwidth Venmo that I'm going to be starting out, because this is just not fair to Brian right now. Brian, where it was is the seasons of 89 and 90, you were on. I can hear you just fine. Can you hear and see me okay, bud?
Yep.
You got to be on campus for 2 years that Chris was at Vanderbilt and played 89 and 90. And how was that for you as a brother to be able to pull for him for those two?
Man, it was phenomenal. It was great to see his success, because, I felt like not only did I have a lot to do with it, but even the guys at Vanderbilt, that were my buddies, they all contributed, and helped him. So no, it was great to see it. We have a great relationship, so it was great. It was exciting times for our family, for sure.
I'm sure that it was, and hopefully we'll get Chris on here one day and let him tell his story, because he kind of set a precedent 30 years before. Tyler Steed transferred from Vanderbilt and went to Alabama and starred, and now in the pros. Brian did that, or excuse me, Chris did that after 2 seasons. But back then, he had to sit out a season, the season of 91, before he was able to get on the field in 92. And of course, who's the first team that they played in this 92 season? I think was Vanderbilt versus Alabama.
Yeah, I think it was at Alabama. I think he got to play against Vanderbilt at Alabama after he sat out a year, and then he came to Nashville for his senior season as well. So yeah,
Well,
interesting talking
I'm
about
sure
the
during that.
walk on. Go ahead.
No, no, I'd rather hear from you than me.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
Interesting about, I know the topic was on the whole walk-on scenario. I heard I think the NCAA is getting ready to increase scholarships to a certain
Mm-hmm.
number. I don't know if you've heard that from, I think I heard Dabo Sweeney talk about that, but going from like
Yeah.
85 scholarships to 105 scholarships, but that
Yep.
is going to be the max that a team can hold. And Dabo was talking about, he has 30 or 40 walk-ons for a
Mm-hmm.
program for a state institution, school, and that he likes having more of the walk-ons because he was a former walk-on himself. But
Right.
he said what's the trend and what's happening is that so many times during these bowl games, so many players are transferring, so many players are sitting out that you really have
Mm-hmm.
to rely on your walk-ons uh, to help fill the gaps if you want to play a postseason ball game. So it'll be interesting what happens to the walk-on community.
Well, I think that, and on that topic, I think that that's going to benefit us, Vanderbilt, that is. I think having more available scholarships for kids who want to come to Vanderbilt and are good ball players,
Mhm.
now there'll be more opportunities. But it's very different from our years, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Brian, I want to talk about post Vanderbilt life for a few minutes. And you graduate in the fall of 90. You're now looking at the next stages in life. Was graduate school next? Were you getting into the working world? Where were you headed after Vanderbilt?
Yeah. So I was a political science major at Vanderbilt. So I was trying to decide if law school or something like that was going to be in my future plans. So I went up to Washington, D.C. Upon graduation and worked up there on the Hill for my congressman, did some odd jobs, just trying to figure out, what that next step was going to be for me. But then I came back and I got into professional sales. So I got into the what they call in the group insurance market, and I've been in the commercial insurance industry ever since.
And how long have you been with your current company?
Yeah, so my current company, I'm with actually a company called ServPro. I don't know if you're familiar with ServPro, if you've ever had to use them on a personal basis, but it's a interesting company. It's a non-cyclical, non-recession resistant type company that I'm working and building out a division on the brokerage side, and we're working with brokers, adjusters, carriers, on the commercial large loss type situation. So, whether it's a catastrophic storm or just a normal water fire loss, that's what we're doing. We're building that out. Blackstone acquired ServPro about 5 years ago. They're about a $5 billion company, 30,000 employees, strong, and only have about 8% market share. So it's a very fragmented market in the blue collar space, uh, but growing. We're growing probably 15 to 20% a year. Cost CAGR growth, cost annual growth rate, which is unheard of, and done that for 50 something years. So pretty interesting dynamic right now. We're going through some senior leadership transitions, so it's pretty exciting.
I want to talk about with your years of professional experience post Vanderbilt.
Mhm.
Did your did your athletic career train you at all for what you've gone through in your professional life?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just the determination or just the workouts, just just the work ethic and always trying to improve every day, right? So I think that's the biggest thing, as an athlete, you're always trying to improve your craft, uh, mind, body, and soul, right? So you just have to you keep doing that. And if you're consistent, staying with it and determined, you'll have success. So I think sports, whether you're playing football or any other sport, as long as you participate, give it all you got, have a great attitude, have some fun, you'll do fine.
When
So yeah.
when you're hiring people or considering new hires, does it give any advantage if that applicant played a college sport of some sort? I've always heard that it does, but I
Yeah.
didn't know from your perspective.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. But you know what, how I really determine? I get in the car with them. I can tell if I want to hire them by the way they drive.
Oh wow.
That's
I've
my,
never heard that.
yeah, that's my telltale sign. But yeah, no, it always helps if you've had an athletic background because you want people to fail, right? You want people to get up, you want people to fight through adversity, you want that determination and that want to learn from failures, right? So it's not a bad thing to fail. You want to fail and you want to fail quick, right? So uh, yeah, just having some kind of experiences like that, I always ask, I want to find out what they failed at and how they overcame adversity, right?
Well, from our perspective, we didn't have a lot of wins during our years playing for Vanderbilt. But that's you're right. That's not the whole story. What happens when you're defeated in a particular contest or you don't reach your goals? I think you're so right that in real life, that's how do you bounce back is so much more important to me than
Yeah.
just tallying win after win because that doesn't teach you much. That gets boring.
Yeah.
You want to see the character of somebody. And frankly, from a teammate standpoint, I think that's so much more important as well. And Brian, we've got just a couple more minutes. I want to ask you, when you look back at your college playing days, what are some memories? What's something that kind of brings a smile to your face or a memory that you kind of maybe relive if you happen to see one of the guys from back in the day?
Yeah. Gosh, so many great memories. One of my favorite memories is just playing pranks with sometimes Scanlon. Uh, but I don't know if you
Mhm.
guys on the call will remember this, but I remember this vividly. There was a a period where either Luke or Bill, we had wet gear. You know how sometimes your gear you get in your box or your little cubby hole, the shirts, the jock might be wet, didn't get dried in time. Well, somebody put, I think, some icy hot or Ben Gay in Doug Bradley's, and I don't know if y'all remember this, but that was pretty funny. I mean, while we're warming up in the pre
Wow.
periods, and you could just hear him just screaming, just and everybody knew what was happening. So that was pretty funny. And I think eventually some male trainers had to circle around him, but I think he had his shirt or he had his jock over his shoulder. He was trying to rip it off. I mean, that was pretty funny. Of
It was
course,
it was
I
funny to
love,
everybody
of
but
course,
one person. I'm
come on, Slaw, check in. Tell me if you remember that or not, or Andy or Fred. But you know, I tell you, I just loved all the characters on the team, right? We just had some great characters. Stump, Arnouts, Thor, uh, Wally. I mean, just some fun characters. Brad, I saw Brad not too long ago, but just some great guys. But the best part I think of the Vanderbilt experience for me was, going to a university where pretty much there was somebody from all 50 states or from different regions of the
Mhm.
United States. And everybody has a different perspective on life, on culture, on politics, on religion, what have you. But you find common ground with these individuals, right? And I think at Vanderbilt and on the football team was very well represented that way versus, maybe Alabama in the 80s where 80% of the team were from Alabama, right? Well, I don't know what those
Mhm.
numbers would be, but the Vanderbilt football team probably represented 20 states, during our time. But even
Oh
across the
yeah,
university with
yeah.
classes and you're meeting students from different places, I think that was probably what I've learned the most through my college experience is that, you know, there's two sides to every story and there's something special about everybody, right? So if you get to know them, find some common ground, network with them, you both can kind of achieve your objectives, right? And I feel like I've used that experience in my professional life. And I think that's one thing, whether it was Vanderbilt athletics or academics or just the social scene, kind of I feel like, you know, helped mold me a little bit, being from just a little
Well,
bedroom community in
it's
Memphis.
well, sure. Those, our college years when you're 18 to say 22, it's a very impressionable time, of course. We come in as knuckleheads and hopefully we mature as young men by the time we graduate. Some mature more quickly than others, but it's the impressions that we leave on our teammates and that they leave on us that I think are the lasting memories. And that's Brian,
Yeah.
that's why I love doing these conversations each week. And it doesn't matter to me if you're the star wide receiver or if you're the fourth kicker on the roster. If you dressed out and played and practiced and represented the black and gold, that's why you're here. And your story is unique to you, and it is appreciated by all of us who were your teammates back in the day. So I really appreciate you sharing some of your experiences with us.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk and connect with the Vandy Nation. So, uh, it's great to see everyone and great to see everybody doing so well and everybody's healthy and doing well. So, hope to see everybody this fall at some of the games you know, or give me a call. Somebody,
Yeah.
if you come in town, love to meet up with you.
Well, Brian, hang in there just a second while I sign off. I want to apologize for my wonky internet. We'll have that fixed hopefully by next week. But Brian, thank you for hanging in there with us. This is kind of an unusual set of circumstances for this evening, but hopefully we've patched this all together and we've got a good story from Brian's perspective. Guys, please keep coming back to the Facebook group. We've got Commodores lined up through the beginning. The season's less than 3 weeks from now will be the first kickoff. There's all kind of good stuff. If you're coming to the games, if you want to go to the tailgates, if you want to claim some tickets, etc., get into the Black Gold Club. You've got a unique code assigned to you that would have been in your email. Use that code to be able to claim your tickets, etc. If you have any questions or concerns about those things, of course, you can get in touch with me or you get in touch with George Smith in the Black and Gold Club. He's in our group as well. Guys, thank you again as always. Brian, thank you, bud, for spending some time with us tonight and always anchor down.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Bernie. Appreciate it.